The whoever principle holds that, given another person's full set of variables, genetics, upbringing, traumas, environments, incentives, information, and pressures, you would likely have made the same choices they did. This is not to say everyone is identical, but that behavior is the predictable outcome of the variables at play. When this principle is truly grasped, it becomes impossible to maintain the illusion that anyone is just bad or inherently worthy of hatred, exclusion, or vengeance. It demands that we see people not as moral abstractions, but as living systems shaped by cause and effect. Under the whoever principle, blame is replaced with understanding. Prejudice is replaced with analysis. Retribution is replaced with reformation. When someone harms others, the principle doesn't excuse their actions, it explains them, and by explaining them, it points to solutions. Address the variables, refine the behavior, protect the public in the meantime, and preserve the person's sovereignty throughout the process. Rational consequences, not punishment. A key outcome of the whoever principle is the complete rejection of punishment as a legitimate foundation for law. Punishment is rooted in emotion, anger, fear, or the desire for payback. It seeks to make someone pay for what they've done. But the question must be asked, pay to whom? And for what purpose? Under rational law, there is no room for arbitrary suffering or symbolic vengeance. The goal is not to make people hurt. It is to prevent repeat harm while preserving universal sovereignty. Consequences, under the whoever principle, are never about what someone deserves. They are strictly about what is justified, and justification must be rational, evidence-based, and aligned with the principle of universality. That is, the consequences applied to one person must be morally and logically consistent with what could be applied to anyone in the same situation. No double standards, no favoritism, no emotional overreach. Sovereignty is preserved. Even when someone has caused harm, they are still considered sovereign under verarchy. Sovereignty is not something you lose, it is something you retain by nature, though it may be restricted in its external application due to demonstrated risk. The person is still a full human being, with dignity, with rights, and with access to education, growth, and opportunities to heal. Any restriction placed on them, such as being temporarily removed from public spaces, is done solely to protect the rights of others, not to reduce or degrade the value of the individual. The goal is to create a safer society without destroying the humanity of those who struggle. Least restrictive means. All consequences must be the least restrictive necessary to achieve the intended rational goal. If someone poses a low risk, the intervention must also be low impact. If someone poses a higher risk, more secure interventions may be necessary, but they must still provide autonomy, dignity, and paths to reintegration. This ensures that law does not overreach. It is not a system of domination, it is a system of stewardship. For example, someone who has committed theft might be required to participate in skill-building, restorative dialogue, or supervised work, not because they deserve it, but because it has been shown through evidence to reduce recidivism and build personal capacity. Someone who has committed violent assault might be temporarily secured, not in a prison designed for punishment, but in a facility that emphasizes self-reflection, behavioral feedback, and social repair. The separation from society is not a banishment. It is a precautionary interval, coupled with efforts to restore the person to a more harmonious version of themselves. Data, not emotion decisions, under the whoever principle must be backed by data. Not fear, not gut instinct, not the cries of a mob. We must ask, what is the statistical likelihood of repeat harm? What interventions have worked in similar cases? What environmental or psychological conditions led to this outcome? What can be done to alter those variables? This allows society to focus on effectiveness, not vengeance. Emotionally charged responses often produce harsher outcomes that do nothing to reduce future harm. Rational responses, grounded in outcomes and evidence, are more likely to work, and far more likely to protect both the individual and the community over time. Reforming the individual, not condemning them. The whoever principle demands that consequences serve the higher purpose of refinement. The goal is not to tear someone down, but to build them up, to support their development into a version of themselves that is more compatible with universal rights and freedoms. It is assumed that no one wants to be trapped in cycles of violence, addiction, or cruelty. These behaviors are almost always signs of deeper variables: pain, lack of resources, distorted beliefs, or unmet needs. By correcting these inputs through therapy, community engagement, education, and economic opportunity, we change the outputs. We stop the cycle. We intervene upstream, rather than simply reacting after the damage is done. This process must be voluntary where possible, incentivized rather than coerced. But when coercion is necessary to preserve the rights of others, it must be minimal, targeted, and always open to review. Even those who refuse to participate in rehabilitation retain the right to safe and humane treatment. Even those who are permanently secured due to unresolvable risk must have access to meaning, growth, and purpose, public safety, and the balance of rights. None of this means that public safety is sacrificed. On the contrary, the public is safer under a rational system than a punitive one. Punishment often escalates trauma and hostility, leading to more crime. Rational restriction reduces crime by resolving the actual causes. The community has the right to be safe, but it does not have the right to vengeance. It does not have the right to erase or dehumanize others. The whoever principle creates a balance. Protect the public and preserve the individual, safety and sovereignty. These are not opposites. They are co-requisites of a just system. A final word. The whoever principle is not a soft excuse. It is a hard truth. It takes moral maturity to admit that behavior is shaped by causes, not essence. It takes humility to say, I could have done the same. But this truth, once embraced, leads to a better world. One where justice heals instead of harms, and where every person, no matter how far they've fallen, retains a path back toward harmony, dignity, and freedom.